Welcome to the Backyard Bouquet podcast, where stories bloom from local flower fields and home gardens. I'm your host, Jennifer Galizia of the Flowering Farmhouse. I'm a backyard gardener turned flower farmer located in Hood River, Oregon. Join us for heartfelt journeys shared by flower farmers and backyard gardeners. Each episode is like a vibrant garden, cultivating wisdom and joy through flowers. From growing your own backyard garden to supporting your local flower farmer, the Backyard Bouquet is your fertile ground for heartwarming tales and expert cut flower growing advice. All right, flower friends, grab your gardening gloves, garden snips, or your favorite vase because it's time to let your backyard bloom. Welcome to another blooming episode of the Backyard Bouquet podcast. Today, I am thrilled to introduce you to a remarkable guest who is not only a dedicated homesteader, but also a passionate advocate for incorporating flowers and herbs into daily life in a mindful way. Joining us from the picturesque mountains outside of Seattle, Washington, is Jess Buttermore, the creative force behind Cedar House Living. At Cedar House Living, Jess has cultivated a small 3-acre farm that serves as a sanctuary for botanical enthusiasts of all ages and experience levels. Through her unwavering dedication to providing beautiful, insightful, and approachable educational resources, Jess invites us to explore the enchanting world of flowers and herbs right from her backyard garden and greenhouse. As an accomplished author, professional botanical photographer, blogger, flower and herb gardener, and folk herbalist, Jess wears many hats with grace and passion. With her warm and welcoming demeanor, she invites us to join her on a journey of discovery, offering a wealth of knowledge and inspiration to help us connect with nature in meaningful ways. Through her books, blog, workshops, annual seed sale, and captivating social media presence, Jess embodies the spirit of mindful living, encouraging us to embrace the beauty of botanicals and share our love of flowers and herbs with those around us. With a portfolio of published works that have graced the pages of esteemed publications such as Click Magazine, In Her Garden Magazine, Trailblazer Magazine, and more, Jess's expertise and creativity shine through in every endeavor. Get ready to be inspired today as we learn more from the extraordinary Jess Buttermore. Join us as we discover the magic of flowers and herbs and learn how to cultivate a life of beauty and wonder, one petal at a time. Welcome, Jess.
Thank you so much, Jen. I am not sure if I can live up to those expectations now. You made me sound so accomplished.
Well, I'm so excited to chat with you today. I have been looking through your website and your books and your social media, and you just seem like a wealth of knowledge. And I know we're going to learn so much from you today. So thank you for being here.
Absolutely. Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. If you don't mind, would you give us a little bit of an insight into your background and how you found gardening and cut flowers?
Yes, I'd love to. So first and foremost, I've always been a photographer. And the long and short of it really is that I was photographing families and newborns for a long time. And that was really when that was part of my life. I was, newly married, shooting a lot of wedding work. And then when I started having children, I started shooting a lot of family photography and it just kind of evolved over time. And then when COVID hit, I ended up not being able to go into hospital rooms anymore, which is where I shot probably about 80% of my work at that time. I was visiting families right after they had their babies or doing birth sessions or going into birthing centers and photographing, those moments. And so that came to a complete halt, as many people's careers did. And so at the same time that was happening, my family was relocating to from a kind of congested tight neighborhood, reach out and touch your neighbor's house type of neighborhood, to the woods. And so we bought an old cabin about 2 miles up a hill, not too far from a landmark waterfall here. And we started renovating it. And then COVID hit, the pandemic, and that gave us a lot of time to really spend on the land, kind of cultivating the land and regenerating it. And so we ended up, my husband built a chicken coop and we made a barn, and, we just started to kind of see, what the different outhouses were here and what we could do with them. And at that same time, my husband said, draw me up your dream garden. And so I did. And
Wow.
we actually spent a full year watching the sun, because as you can imagine, building a garden in the woods is no small feat. And so we are surrounded by old growth cedars and firs, and that presents a lot of challenges. And so we spent about a year looking through and just kind of watching where the sun hit, where do we get the most sunlight, and documenting it. And then the following year we built the garden. And that, that whole transition, and coupled the transition of my photography, where I started shooting what I had available to me, which was my homestead and flowers, coupled with my with relocating, it just turned us it turned my whole career toward botanicals and education, using my background as a writer and my background as a photographer and my backyard garden.
I love that. You have a very similar background to me. I
I
spent
do.
12 years as a professional photographer,
Oh,
and in my career specializing in newborn photography and weddings as well. I actually shut down my studio because of COVID. And that was when I went full-fledged flower farming. I was doing flower farming on the side, and my life kind of flip-flopped. So you said something that I think makes a lot of sense to you and I, but someone that's maybe not a photographer might not have had the same mindset as you. You said you spent a year documenting the light and paying attention to the light. I would love to touch a little bit more on that, because knowing the light is so important in growing a garden. Can you talk a little bit about
I
how
would
you
love
watched
to.
the light and what you
Yeah.
did?
So when I say I watch the light, I actually watch the light for two reasons. One is because, as you're cluing us into, when I shoot, I'm a natural light photographer. So there's two types of light that can be used in photography for anyone who isn't familiar with the ins and outs of it. But one is natural light, which is using your outdoor, light coming from a window if you're outside, or being outside between dawn and dusk. The other light is artificial light. So that's when you think of those big umbrellas with the lights in them that, happen to be maybe in like a formal portraiture setting, your Olin Mills, that kind of, where you've got these shining lights typically on one side or the other. And so I shoot natural light. That means I come to every session that I ever went to, never brought any type of lighting, artificial lighting with me at all. As long as I had one window, I could shoot an entire session. And, or if I was outside, I could shoot an entire session. That was my only requirement when people said, well, my house is just filthy. And I said, I don't care what's in your house. Do you have a window? I need you and a window. That's all I need. And then once they realized they didn't have to clean their house, it was like whoosh, newborn, my mom with the newborn. So anyway, I digress. So when it came to the garden, I first and foremost wanted to do the majority of my shooting west. I wanted to shoot into evening light. And the reason is because evening light is what is known as that golden hour. And golden hour is, typically 2 hours before dusk, and running right into what's called blue hour. And so that time period is my favorite time to shoot, whether it's a human or, my chickens or my sheep, my sheep or my, um, my garden, my flowers, whatever I'm shooting. I love shooting during that time because I am photographing alongside the light, and I'm using that to kind of accentuate whatever it is that I am photographing. So the first thing I wanted to do was make sure that my garden beds and just the positioning of the garden allowed me to not have my back to the sunset, but rather be facing forward toward the sunset. And then the second reason that we paid such close attention for a full year is because when you live in the woods, it's such the trees, they're so close. They're actually surrounding our entire property. We only have 3 acres, and literally our 3 acres is circled all the way around by old growth trees. So they're very, very tall. And that presents an issue of getting enough light for all of your flowers and herbs, that need 8 hours of sunlight a day. And so we definitely had some challenges there. And what's interesting, there was already a small garden here, a backyard garden on the property, and we actually are not able to use it
Oh,
because when they built that garden, the trees were not as tall as they are now. And so when we watched that where the sunlight was, it just wasn't working at all, nothing was going to grow there. And really, I have trouble growing anything there. And so we ended up pulling out our entire backyard, what would
mm,
be considered a backyard, and making it a garden. And so that's where that came from. So when you walk out of my back door, which is technically, I think, when it was built, considered the front door, you look out onto the garden, up like down to it, and then from there you look out to the sunset. And so it actually works out beautifully. We have other areas of land that can be a backyard. And so it turned out to be a wonderful way to photograph my flowers and herbs, everything that I knew I kind of wanted to do, and also make sure that they get enough light to grow.
I love that. My family pretty much knows that in the summertime, when it's golden hour, they better look out in the field because
You'll
that's where I'm
find me
going
in
to be.
you'll find me in the garden. Yeah.
Once a photographer, always a photographer, I think.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's so funny because for the most part, I do love shoot. I mean, there are certain times where I need to shoot certain types of details where it actually helps if it's almost more overcast, just a very flat light. But when I'm shooting for beauty, I really do want to work with the light. People are so much more drawn to an image that shares shares light than one that is, a flat lay and overcast. So it definitely gives a different dynamic to the same exact image.
Absolutely. I would love to talk a little bit more about the photography because I think everyone loves documenting their gardens.
Of course.
And I think there's a misconception that you need to be a photographer or bring in a photographer to get beautiful pictures of your garden. But the truth is that I rarely pull out my good cameras anymore. Most of the time, my cell phone, unless I'm trying to print and blow up the image. But if I just want something to share with friends and family or my audience on social media, my cell phone can take really great pictures if I time it correctly and use light and Mother Nature in my favor. Can you talk and give us some tips for those that would like to take better pictures of their flowers in their gardens?
First and foremost, I could not agree with you more that you really do not need a DSLR or, goodness, the mirrorless cameras that are really popular right now. I do shoot with my DSLR outside over the past couple years, particularly, but that's mostly because I was shooting for these books. And so, like you said, I knew that everything that I was shooting had the potential of going into one of these two books that was working on. And so I was shooting that way, but for the most part, you really don't need to. Um, I think that knowing the basic functionality of your camera phone is really important, and they have that means so much power now. Making sure that you're shooting in RAW form is very important, in the RAW format, so that you aren't already kind of clipping your quality before you've even edited it. And There is an app called InShot that I use and I highly recommend. My friend Robin of Life of Glow, who is also a photographer and gardener, she's a very good friend of mine, and she pointed that out to me. It allows you to use your own presets if you have them, or maybe your favorite photographer's presets, with in a very, very easily with the click of a button. But it also allows you to prepare your imagery, turn it into video, reels, that kind of thing. So it's called InShot, and it is very user friendly for somebody who, maybe has Lightroom, the Lightroom app or the Photoshop app. And it's just, both of those programs can be a bit intimidating to someone who is not a photographer.
This is an app for the phone?
On your phone, yes, on your phone. And it allows you to take your video or your photos and edit them and prepare them to share on social media, or even in print. I mean, the quality is that good. And
Wow.
so, I think it costs like $1 or $2 to download it, if that. I don't even remember, but it's inexpensive in the broad scheme of things, considering what it costs to use Lightroom mobile. And it's been really a wonderful app to use. And then it streamlines your process and it moves it right into Instagram for you, saves it, downloads it right to your phone. And then you just go to Instagram and you can share, or whatever your social media outlet is that you like to share your flowers and your garden experience. And it just makes it a little bit easier to do that. So that's another thing that I recommend, is make sure you're in RAW, and make sure that whenever you're shooting, that you are shooting a little bit of film and a couple stills, because you always end up wanting those stills as well. You kind of, I used to be the other way around. I was always taking stills and never filming. And now I find that I'm always filming and never taking stills. So definitely make sure you're doing a combination of both of those when you have a pretty setting and something that you want to remember.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Of
When
course,
you're talking about shooting in RAW, can you shoot in RAW format on a cell phone?
you do. Yes. Well, I have an iPhone. I can only speak to iPhone, but I'm pretty sure every phone does have RAW. At
So,
least I think so.
can you explain while we're on the
Mm-hmm.
call how
Yep.
someone could shoot in RAW format? And I don't want to go too
Yep.
deep in
That's okay.
photography terms because I know this is a flower
Yes.
podcast, but I think
I know.
everyone would love to take better pictures. So, to
Absolutely.
clarify, traditionally, pictures are shot in a JPEG format on your phone or on a camera. A RAW format gives you more access to take care of highlights and shadows and adjust the contrast and the brightness. You can recover more in a photo when you shoot in a RAW format. It is a format that professional photographers shoot in, dare I say, 100% of the time. On
Yeah.
my DS, I can't even talk today. On my
Okay.
DSLR and my mirrorless, I only shoot in manual and in RAW format. I did not know that the cell phone could shoot in RAW. So I would love for you to walk us through that, because I'm sure there are some people listening that would like to take a better picture on their phone. So can you tell
It's
us
so
how to do
easy.
that?
Yes, all you do is open up your camera as if you're going to take a picture. And in the top right corner, do you see the little circle?
There's a little circle, yes.
Okay. And so when you click into that, it should take that line off of there's it looks like a target.
Mine says either live on or off. Is that what it is?
No, mine says, see, I think we have different versions perhaps, but mine says raw max on it. And so when you click, you can turn that on or off if you click the circle. I think it depends on what version you have of the iPhone.
I will have to include some notes in the show notes on how
Yes,
to do it. I just figured it out on my
you
phone.
did. Wonderful.
So mine, I had to actually go into the iPhone settings,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
scroll down to camera,
Mm-hmm.
and then when I clicked on camera, I clicked on formats.
Mm-hmm.
And then on formats, I had to turn on the Pro Raw and resolution control. So this would be for someone who is wanting to use an app like InShot or Lightroom to
Mobile. Yep.
edit their pictures on their phone. If they're not going to edit them and they're just going to post them straight to Facebook or Instagram, they should probably still shoot in JPEG. Is that correct?
Yes. If you're, I I shoot this way, but that's mostly because I am editing with a preset as well. And so if somebody is using a preset, a lot of times presets that don't have, they will end up being um, almost distorting an image if the image is too low resolution to really be using the preset. Starts to almost distort what the image looks like. But with a raw image, you wouldn't have that happen.
Can you clarify for our listeners? I'm
It's
so sorry
okay.
if this is going over anyone's head. I wanted this to be
Yeah,
helpful
yeah,
because pictures speak 1,000 words, and pictures draw our hearts in and spread so much joy. One of my favorite things about sharing pictures of flowers online is that I know it's bringing joy. Instead of seeing a negative post, you get to share something that's absolutely beautiful, that if it just brings a smile to one person's face, it was worth sharing that photo.
absolutely.
You mentioned presets. In case someone doesn't know what a preset is, can you tell us what a preset for a photo is?
Absolutely. So, in very simple terms, when you take a picture, regardless of what format you're taking it in, if you went to um, edit your image, let's say you notice that it's really bright and you want to just kind of tone down the brightness a little bit, or you want to make your red pop, so you slide those little bars back and forth that are in the edit section of your camera phone. Whether you're making something brighter, whether you're adding contrast or getting rid of some dark shadows on someone's face, you're just sliding those bars back and forth. What you can do with a preset, or when you purchase a preset, is you are saving all of those slides where you slid those bars back and forth. You're saving them all together in a little package. And so that every time you want to shoot, you can click that preset and all those bars slide for you and make it look like what you want it to look like. So for me, if you were to scroll through my Instagram page, for example, my imagery all has a certain tone to it. Maybe the hues, the colors, the saturation, just the way that the colors meet your eye. That is a result of my preset. It's just the way that I chose saturation and vibrance and exposure and all of those things together. And I created a set of presets that I click, and that makes an image look that way. And so presets can be loaded onto your phone if you have Lightroom Mobile, or they can be loaded into your laptop or your computer if you are using Lightroom Classic or regular Lightroom. So that's kind of, yeah, and they're specific to Lightroom. They would be considered in the Instagram world filter is what they're called.
Yes.
So kind of like when you think of the filters and you flip, a filter and it makes your image look, changes the hue or the color or the, whatever. It's along those lines. Only you created it yourself or you purchased it from someone whose photography you like, their style, their colors you like.
Thank you for that clarification. I was going to say that in my photography days, I used a ton of presets. in the end, it was all ones that I had created myself because it created a consistent look to my work that I could quickly edit photos and make minor adjustments. So the nice thing about a preset is it's basically a filter that you can create a consistent look across your brand or your page or your photos online. So whether you have a flower farming business or you're a cut flower gardener and you just want to show your pictures to your friends and family, certain filters and presets can make that a lot easier to have a consistent look. There's one tip that I wanted to throw in for photographing flowers since we're on the subject, and I'm sure it's something that you use also. And I know this is not a video podcast, so bear with me here. But as you're listening, if you hold your hand out in front of you with your palm facing away from you, this is the trick that I always told my clients if they wanted to take a better picture when you're out photographing your flowers. If you hold your hand in front of you and the sun is shining brightly on your hand, you're going to have harsh shadows and harsh lighting. Where if you move your body so that your hand is now shaded over, you're going to have a more flattering look to your picture. So sometimes when you're photographing your flowers, you just need to move your body instead of trying to move the flower, or you can't necessarily move the garden, but sometimes all you have to do is move your position to get a better shot.
Absolutely.
Is that something you do?
I don't do that specifically, but I actually wrote a blog article about all of this, so I should send that to you.
Yeah. Yes, please. We can include that in the show notes.
Absolutely. I think I wrote it years ago, but I'm sure it's all still, I mean, this is something that doesn't change a whole lot. So, but yes, I typically like my light. Pretty much, I just don't shoot overhead when my light is overhead. If you can avoid shooting when your light is overhead, that's, that noon to 3 p.m. time range, 11 to 3, depending on the time of year. But I just avoid that at all costs. And it doesn't matter if I'm shooting a human or if I'm photographing flowers. I just do not shoot during that time. I really don't even do video during that time either. I prefer morning or evening. And it's when you're watering anyway, no one's watering at noon. So, when you're out there watering and you're harvesting, which you also should be harvesting, first thing in the morning or in the, that's the time when you should be taking your pictures anyway. So hit 3 birds with 1 stone, go out and photograph and water and harvest and do all that at the same time.
Thank you for going so deep into the photography there with us. There's one last thing that I want to bring up on the photography, because I have heard it from so many flower farmers lately, and it's been a heated topic. And I don't want to get this political, but I think it's an important thing to say. When we are scrolling through social media or the internet and we see beautiful pictures, it's so important to remember that there is a person or a brand behind that image, and that image belongs to them. And especially, it's been seen a lot in Dahlia sales lately. People are lacking their own photos and using or borrowing, with good intentions, photos from other people to list their products. I just want to clarify that as a professional photographer, that's not okay. And if you want to use an image from someone, what would your recommendations be?
Reach out to that person directly. I can tell you that people reach out to me quite often, and I almost always provide and willing to let them use the image for their purposes, because let's face it, we're all in this together. And these, when people reach out to me, I think, I'm trying to think of who reached out to me recently. The Dahlia house. Anyway, somebody needed some imagery for the Seattle Flower and Garden Show. She was doing a big display, and she, instead of just taking the images off of my Instagram or my website, which she could have, she asked me for permission. I said absolutely, and then I was able to provide her with the high-res imagery so that the imagery was beautiful and looked the way that it was supposed to. And in return, she was able to put a little blurb with my website and Instagram underneath the image that was on display at the show. And so when you do that, when you reach out to the grower or to the photographer directly, you can build a relationship with them. And now she and I are using, she knows that she can reach out to me again for them. I didn't charge her anything for it. Some people may. So, it depends on, what you're trying to do on Instagram, but on social media. But I really just loved the chance to help someone in an endeavor that they were doing, a botanical floral, project that they were working on. And I got to be a small part of it in that way. Instead of walking by that show, seeing my photography and feeling slighted and feeling taken back by the fact that someone had used it without permission, it was handled in a very upfront, kind way. And so I definitely think reaching out and asking is the best way to go. I mean, there is a person, like you said, behind that image who can feel slighted when you take them without permission, and also who might welcome the opportunity for their image to be used for good.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. So, hopefully, we have given everyone some helpful tips to take better garden pictures of their own flowers. And if you're lacking something, please remember to just ask. Most people are kind. Do remember, though, that if you're asking a professional photographer or a business person, it is their business, it is their livelihood. So, you may not get a yes, but at least ask. Please don't use someone else's image without permission. And we'll just leave it at that. Let's talk about your books. You have written, is it 2 books?
Yes.
And so
Yes.
your first book you published is
The Love Language of Flowers. So I co-authored that book with my friend Lisa McGinnis. She actually created kind of the core of that book several years ago, and wanted to recreate it, and give it a different vibe. So she pretty much handed it over to me and allowed me to run with it. And it needed, it needed some love. There was a lot that could be added to it. And so we added, well, anyway, what the book is about is it is divided into a few sections, but it first and foremost deals with the love language of flowers and understanding the florography behind all of the different flowers and what they mean, and the history behind what they mean. And so the first section talks about the history of florography, and then it goes into a toolbox of different types of tools and skills that you can learn to create with those flowers. So the book, then it goes into a glossary, 3 glossaries actually. The first glossary is a glossary of flowers by the flower's name. So if you said, I really love dahlias and I would love to know what dahlias mean, you would go to the first glossary and look up the D for dahlia. Now, if it were, let's say you wanted to create an arrangement for someone who is expecting a baby, and you wanted to, bring an arrangement that meant, congratulations, you could look up in the second glossary the word congratulations. And so the second glossary is all about the meanings, and then finding out what flowers mean congratulations or mean happiness, excitement, that kind of thing. Same thing if you had a sick friend and you wanted to bring a set of some flowers to a sick friend. What words would you think of? You'd think of health, well-being. You look those words up in the glossary, the second one, and it actually gives you lots of different flowers that mean that. And then the third glossary is by season, because in the fall and winter season, there tend to be a lot less options than in the spring and summer. And so what I did was we divided up what's generally available in wherever you are in the world, your fall and winter season. And those flowers are listed there and what they mean. And then same thing with spring and summer. So that's what the second big part of the book is about, if I were to divide it into sections. And then the last section of the book really is giving examples of different types of arrangements. For example, of an arrangement that means bravery, an arrangement, the Mother's Day bouquet, and what might be included in a Mother's Day bouquet. Um, you know, something that means patience, like somebody's waiting patiently to receive a piece of information. So you wanted to send them some flowers that mean patience, that kind of thing. So the idea behind the book, behind both of the things that I've written recently and behind what the core of my business in general is to encourage people to be able to feel the confidence, have some of the basic skills to work with flowers. Doesn't mean you have to grow them. It doesn't mean you have to have a garden. This book is for anybody who loves flowers. And it can be certainly for gardeners. It can be for florists, but it's not necessarily for only them. But the idea is really just to encourage people to work with flowers, to buy locally and sustainably, to work with them, and most importantly, to gift them and to bring someone else joy and to show kindness through flowers, in addition to enjoying working with them yourself.
I love that. So someone could either grow them and use your book to figure out a special arrangement to make, or they could go to their local flower farmer or florist
Yes.
and say,
Yes.
I need these ingredients. Or they could ask
Yes.
their local florist to make a bouquet that includes certain flowers in them.
Exactly. Lots of different ways the book can be useful. And then if you are a florist or a flower farmer, this book would be a great resource, particularly the glossaries, when you are buying seeds, when you're buying bulbs, when you're starting to think about things. Tulips have different meanings by color. And so knowing what the different colors mean can be really important. The size of a sunflower can mean haughty or happiness.
Oh.
So, it's nice to know that, right? And so these are some of the things that could be, and these are meanings based on Victorian times. So, this is long ago, when a lot of things couldn't be said aloud. People would hold them in their paintings when they were being photographed and they were being painted, and they would hold flowers, or they would have a brooch that had a flower or a little bouquet sitting in their lap. And that was their way of saying something in their painting, or saying something to someone else that couldn't be said aloud. And so that's where the core of the florography comes from.
Lovely. Okay, so without spilling too much of your book, it is tulip season right now. So you just mentioned that different tulips and colors have different meanings. Let's just take a pink tulip. Can you talk to us and share a little bit about the meaning of a pink tulip?
Yes, I can. So the pink tulip means declaration of love. So tulips in general mean joy and perfect love. So
Ooh.
tulip just has a very positive, uplifting meaning in general. So anytime you're gifting a tulip, you could always, if you were giving it with a little card, or you were giving a tulip arrangement through your local florist, and they always have the little message you can share. You could easily say, tulips, sending you these tulips for perfect love and joy, or if they're pink, a little expression of my love for you, like a declaration of love. That's exactly, little messages like that could tell the person that you're thinking of them and that you chose this flower for them specifically. It makes somebody feel really important. Within the book, I actually have just a little QR code that takes you to a really simple botanical card that you can print and use if you wanted to for your own use. But or just adding it to whatever card you were already going to send. So you can take any arrangement, even if it's something that was already pre-made, so you didn't get to pick and choose the ingredients, and you can look it up. You can look up what the meanings are and find the ones that feel, you know, that feel good to you when you think of the person that they're going to, and write a little message to them and say, these tulips mean perfect love. And I just love how the love that you show your children. And I think it's a perfect love, and, that kind of thing. That's the idea behind it. And it really does make somebody feel special.
That's beautiful. It really assigns value and it personalizes the gift.
It
Flowers
does.
are such a great gift to give and share with others, but to take it to a whole nother level is what you're doing. You are literally making it so that we can say this tulip means pure love or whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
and really personalizing it. I think in a world where everything is so readily made and available, that when you can take the time to personalize something, it has such a special touch and can really, really make a difference in someone's life. So, another holiday that is coming up is Mother's Day.
Mm-hmm.
Can you share with us something that we might be able to find in your book that would help us for Mother's Day, as we want to honor the moms in our
Absolutely.
life?
So I have a Mother's Day arrangement in the book, and I'm just going to pull it up and read to you what is in it so that you can start thinking about what combination of flowers you would want in your Mother's Day arrangement. But tulip is certainly one of them. One of the nice things about the Mother's Day arrangement that I put in the book is that it not only includes um, flowers that are meaningful to motherhood, but it also is it includes all of the flowers are typically available um, during the month of May. So hold on, I'm just having trouble finding it here. I know it's here. Here it is. Okay. So obviously the tulip, which is perfect love, declaration of love and joy. Um, and then let's see here. So the daffodil actually, um, I use the cheerful daffodil, the fragrant one, and it actually represents admiration and regard. One thing to keep in mind with narcissus is that you typically don't want it to share water with any other flower. And I have a lot of tips about how to get around that in the book. So there's lots of different tips and tricks, thinking about your flowers that can make water dirty. And what do we do about that? Uh, talking about vase life. There's certain flowers that have a really long vase life and other ones that have a very short vase life. So if you're creating arrangement, but you're not going to be able to get it to the person for 3 days, maybe don't put poppies in there. So that's I have an entire section in the book that has a full page list of all of the most popular flowers used in arrangements and what their vase life is.
Oh,
And
how
so
helpful.
that right there, it's a really great page. I see people with the book and they all have tabs on that page. And I love seeing the tabs, because that means it's being used. This book, it has all my photography. And it is a beautiful book just for the photography, but it is a resource. And I'm really hoping that as people learn about the book, they can learn what a resource it actually is. And so I have summer snowflakes in here. I have eucalyptus, gunny eucalyptus for protection. The French pussy willow for motherhood, represents motherhood specifically. Of course, the rose. I think I put the pink rose in here. Yes, the pink rose, which means grace. So there's lots of different, things that you can do. Um, Moss represents motherhood.
Oh,
Yeah, I know there's lots of different fun ways. If you were, let's say, I actually have a blog article I could send you. It has a Mother's Day arrangement that is a live arrangement in soil. and all the different ingredients that I put in it, and then covered it with moss. I used a vintage bowl that I found at a thrift store that I knew my mother would love, that type of thing. And it made a beautiful gift. And then she was able to take out and replant all the bulbs that were in it.
Oh, I love
So
that.
there's lots of fun, and everything was meaningful to mom. And so I have an article on that I should send you to send along with it as well. But
Yes, we can include that in the show notes.
yeah.
Thank you. So, how did you get the inspiration, or how did you find all of these meanings?
So some of it was already provided by my friend Lisa. Uh, she uh, she had the bulk of it already created and was just waiting for the right opportunity and the right person to kind of take the bull by the horns, you know. And so, other than that, we researched ourselves pretty significantly to over several months to add to it and to think about. We went beyond flowers, we went into herbs, and there's a large history of herbs in Victorian and folklore um, and back to ancient times, really. I mean, back to um, ancient Egypt. And so there's a lot of background there. It was just a matter of finding it. The Herbal Academy was a wonderful resource, looking through the background of herbs and understanding some of their meanings. We added that to the book, and that was kind of missing from the skeleton that we were working with. And even starting to think about branches. Right now it's really popular to add beautiful spring branches and twigs into your floral arrangements to give it that kind of earthy, whimsical feel. And I love doing it myself. And then it's always also a fun surprise when you go to change the water and it started growing roots, right? And you're like,
And you can
oh,
plant it.
exactly. You're like, I just propagated. So, but yes. And so it's definitely a book that goes a little bit beyond flowers. It definitely starts to talk about herbs and branches and all the different types of meanings that they have as well.
So, of all the flowers you have included in the book, which one has the most significant
Oh,
meaning to you?
oh, that's so hard. Can I do two?
Sure.
I have three really, but
Okay, let's hear three.
well, hellebore is one of my favorite. It's growing right now all over my property, um, and it really is representative of kind of pushing through adversity and
Mm.
showing strength during tough times. And I've had my fair share of those, as we all have. And so that flower is very beautiful. It's that first one to pop through the snow, and so it makes perfect sense that would be its meaning as well. I even have ink, and my husband even has ink of hellebore. We both have tattoos with hellebore on it.
Oh,
But
I love that.
those are my favorite. And then I um, last a few years ago, when I started growing dahlias, I had collected seed and grew this dahlia that the bees made. It wasn't me trying to be some like dahlia breeder or anything like that. Like I am not that whatsoever. I just the bees made me this beautiful dahlia, and it was very large and kind of almost too large to use successfully in an arrangement. It was kind
Uh-huh.
of a bud stem type of flower, like just put it in a bud vase. But and we called it, my husband named it My Little Pumpkin because it was like a peach color, and pumpkin was my like nickname, and it's my daughter's. He calls her My Little Pumpkin.
How
And so
sweet.
that flower is also very special. And we thought we lost it last year because I went to check on all my tubers and they had all molded,
Oh, no.
and it was heartbreaking. I had been doing the same storage process for years and never had an issue. And something changed. I don't know. I had to be the conditions of my greenhouse. And, like I think maybe we had like a unexpected warm front and then followed by a frost or something. I don't know. But and I thought I lost like 75% of my tubers, but that one ended up making it. And so we had it another year. So it was really special again. And this year I got more tubers out of it and I pulled them and everything looks good. So I'm hopeful that it will continue to have that very dahlia that's been with us since we started growing. And then peony means bravery, and it will always be a favorite flower of mine. And it was my wedding bouquet flower as well. White peony.
Lovely. And it's the flower of the year. Going back to the dahlia, I don't think you said what the meaning of it was.
Strength.
Strength.
And hold on one second. I don't have all of them memorized, believe it or not. Might have more than one. Sometimes they have more than one. So that's why I am going to look it up. Dignity. Yep. And strength, dignity, and everlasting commitment.
Ooh.
Positive all the way around. Yeah.
How lovely.
It's such a great flower, and it's come back into trend. It's so popular again. Yeah, it's a good one.
Well, I think most listeners know that one has my heart.
I think so too. Yes. You grow beautiful ones.
So you mentioned that in your first book, The Love Language of Flowers, you also included a section on growing herbs. And now you have come out with a full book dedicated just to herbs. Is that correct?
Well, almost.
Almost.
What I had mentioned with regard to herbs is that we added the meanings of many herbs into the glossaries that's within the Love Language of Flowers. So the one thing to keep in mind about the Love Language of Flowers is it's not a gardening book. Gardeners love this book, but it isn't about gardening. It's about flowers and understanding their meanings and how to use them and how to gift them. The second book, Seasonal Living with Herbs, is a gardening book. So that is the book that takes you through everything from really deciding, do I want to grow from seed or do I want to buy starts? Do I want to do a container garden or do I want to do a garden beds? Do I want to have a theme to my garden? If so, what is that theme? And gives you lots of different examples of themes. How do I make sure that my garden is something I'm going to use in my life? How do I blend the garden into my everyday living seasonally? That's what Seasonal Living with Herbs is. A lot of the book could be very specific to herbs or very general to any gardening. It talks about herb gardening, but if you're creating a garden, it gives a lot of information. It takes you through seed starting, and whether you're starting a dahlia seed or a sage seed, you're still using all the same materials. You're doing the same thing.
Sure.
So that's the second book. The second book is a gardening book and talking about then after you have grown your seeds, and you have your herbs, how to use them throughout the seasons.
I love that. In episode 12 of The Backyard Bouquet, I chatted with Stephanie Bittner, and she recently released the Fragrant Cut Flower Garden book.
I saw that.
And
it's in my wish list right now. I saw that and put it in there. That looks amazing.
Yes, there's so many wonderful books. My library keeps growing. I love it. Mixed with my flowers and my dried flowers, I have stacks of lovely books.
I know.
No, I find so much inspiration in all of them. But in her book, a lot of the fragrance comes from, I shouldn't say a lot, but some of it comes from herbs. Mm-hmm. And I really, really love using herbs in my cut flower bouquets.
Absolutely.
Do you talk about that?
Yes, I do.
You do.
Absolutely, because I do the same. These books are just, especially the herb book, it's my heart. It's everything that I do all year round. And I'm just sharing it in pages. And so, yes, I have been putting herbs in my floral um, arrangements for many years, and I've written lots of blog articles on it. And my top 5 favorite or my top 7 favorite ones, the ones I don't use anymore, and I do talk about that in the book as well. So I kind of explain, which ones I like and for what reason, which ones last the longest in vase, that kind of thing.
What's
But
your
yes.
favorite herb to use in a bouquet?
Oh gosh. Um, I mean, I really love using mint because I grow several different types of mint, and they all have, I have like a lavender mint and an orange mint and that kind of thing. So I love adding mint, and it's always very highly fragrant, so people notice it right away. You don't have
Mm-hmm.
to put your nose into the bouquet to smell it. Sage is another one that I really love using in arrangements. Just that feathery, soft the feathery soft leaves, I think, just look so beautiful. And the grayish green tends to really complement the colors of flowers that I grow. And so I tend to use that a lot. Some of the less commonly used ones, I would say basil. I use a lot of basil. The black basil and purple basil, particularly, I think looks beautiful in arrangements. Also, because I tend to grow a lot of cream and pink and white flowers, so
Mm-hmm.
adding the dark foliage always looks really pretty. And I'm not a professional florist. My goal with my business is really just to inspire people and to educate people, but with herbs and flowers and the combination of them, as we're discussing. And I think, trying to think, I use some flowering oregano in them as well.
I love flowering oregano. I think I have the
Yeah.
Greek oregano. It has a purple
Purple. Yep.
flower.
Yep.
Yes.
So I have that one as well. And then there's sweet marjoram actually flowers as well, a purple. And well, I think some of it's purple and some of them flower in a white, but they also are really fun and add a lot of whimsicality to your arrangements. So I think, and almost any herb that that is growing, I tend to intermingle my flowers and herbs throughout as well in my garden beds. My garden beds are not just any one flower. I'm mixing and matching all the time because a lot of the herbs, and I do talk about this in the book as well, complement flowers because they not only are pollinator friendly, but they tend to keep away the pests. So there are certain herbs that can be very helpful for that. And so I talk quite a bit about that in the book as well.
So some companion planting with the
Mhm.
cut flowers.
Yeah.
I have found that even I like to work in odd numbers in my bouquet. So
Mhm.
adding 3 or 5 sprigs of herbs into a
Mhm.
bouquet can go such a long ways. And like you said, you don't have to put your nose in that bouquet. You can just hold that bouquet and you pass it off to someone and they're like, oh my goodness, what is that
Mhm.
smell? And in a good way. I mean, I
Yeah.
do have to be careful. I like the smell of feverfew, but
Uh-huh.
I know a lot of people don't care for it because it's a little bit stronger. I think it's more
Mhm.
of an acquired smell, but that's an herb that I love to use.
Feverfew is just gorgeous. Some of those like, you know, more stout white varieties. I do grow a few snowball, I want to say one called snowball.
I
And
have that one, yes.
oh, that one is my favorite for floral. But yeah, and yarrow is another really easy to grow, drought tolerant. Just I've thrown it just in an area where grass died.
Yeah.
It just makes all these beautiful colors, and they're gorgeous in arrangements as well.
And then a great thing about herbs is that so many of them are perennials. I'm trying to think of the ones we've mentioned. Basil, at least for me in my growing zone, is not a perennial, but all the others we've talked about
Yeah,
come back year after year.
yeah.
Many of them die to the ground, like my mint dies down to the ground.
Feverfew only lasts a few years.
But it
Most
self-seeds. I don't know about for you, but mine
it
just
does.
pops up everywhere.
It does. It self-seeds if you let it. I mean, I'm cutting all the time, so I probably don't let it as much as I should, but it typically the root system of that is only going to last a few years. But other than that, everything we talked about is a perennial.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And in the book, I list the herbs that I grow, the majority of them, and I talk about how to care for that herb, how to grow it, how to care for it, how to cultivate it, how to harvest it, and also how to use it, but then also how to care for it at the end of the year so that it comes back next year.
Oh,
That's in the book as
perfect.
well. Yeah.
Can you give us a tip on harvesting herbs? Because if you harvest them too soon, they're not going to hold up in bouquets. But if you harvest at the right time, some of these herbs can last for weeks or set root in a bouquet.
I can't remember if I have it in the herb book. I might have put some information on that, but it is in the love language of flowers, actually. But as far as what I have noticed, I've only been using herbs for about four years in my bouquets, and I have found that for me, I tend to harvest early, and the reason that I harvest early is because that's when they're the most fragrant, and I harvest early in the morning. So right after the dew has settled, right when the dew is gone, if there is, um, but before it gets too warm, because that's when all of those medicinal properties and the fragrance that we want,
Mm-hmm.
the flavor, if you're using it in the kitchen, that all is going back down into the root system during the day, and then it will pull back up into your leaves in the evening when it's not as hot. So it's really important the time of day that you harvest, for me, even more than at what point during the lifespan of any particular herb. But I always tend to, if I'm going to weigh on the side of caution, I harvest them a little early than too late, just to make sure the fragrance is there. What have you found?
I well, I usually try and do all my harvesting early morning before it gets
Mhm.
too hot. And
Yeah.
then basil, I'll typically cut at in the evening time after that golden hour as the sun is already set and before it gets dark. And I'll
Mhm.
put it in a bucket of hot water and I'll
Mhm.
let it sit overnight. And I usually have a certain percentage that doesn't rehydrate. I
Mhm.
found that you really have to make sure that it has a nice woody stem. If you harvest a soft stem, it's not going to hold up. But I found that if I let them harvest and condition overnight, and if they look nice and healthy in the morning, I can put it in an arrangement and it should last at least 10 days, if not several weeks. The biggest thing is keeping that basil in water. And usually people will tell me when I deliver them in our CSA bouquets, I've had people reach out and say, it rooted. I planted it in my garden because it lasted so long.
It's the best. When I give arrangements, I do the same thing I always mention. These herbs are grown organically, so you can pull them right out of this arrangement and use them in your salad tonight, or you can garnish, use them to steep, whatever you want with regard to that. Or you can also dry them, or you can propagate them. I actually have a section on a propagation station in the book, and lots of tips on propagating as well. But those unexpected propagations are always my favorite.
Yes,
But yeah, I think you're right about that. I think that's a really good point. For the most part, for perennials, you don't really want to be cutting your woody stems. And so, but for basil, it's your annual. That's the one that you can, because it doesn't matter. You're not going to have that plant again next year anyway. So basil is one that you can do that with. The rest of them, you typically, you want your stem to be firm, but really cutting in the morning is the best bet.
perfect. Thank you for those tips. Well, we have covered a lot, and I feel like we could go so much deeper today.
You know.
I appreciate you sharing all of this knowledge with us, from everything from photography to talking about the love language of flowers. I think that making flowers even more personal, when we can add that personal touch in this world, oh, that's just so special. And then adding herbs that have that fragrance in the bouquet that will create memories, because when you give that bouquet with that smell of mint, the next time someone smells mint, they're going to think of that beautiful bouquet of flowers. So thank you for sharing on all these topics. For those that would like to learn more about you or read your books or follow you online, how can our audience find you?
I I share a lot of my journey on Instagram, which is Cedar House Living, and my website, which is cedarhouseliving.com. And I have a newsletter that I send out typically once or twice a month. And I'm not always as consistent as I should be with that, which you can sign up for at the bottom of my homepage. Just pop your email in and hit subscribe. So those are the primary ways to be able to follow along with me, which I hope you will.
Excellent. Thank you. And are your books available at
All major book retailers
all major book
everywhere.
retailers?
Yep. So,
Great.
yes, if you want a signed copy, I would love for you to purchase it through my website, and then I can get you a signed copy. Um, and I have both of them for sale there. Other than that, if they're available on, everywhere books are sold.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Well, before we say goodbye today, I'd like to give you an opportunity to share any parting wisdom or anything that we didn't touch on today. Is there some advice that you would like to give to our listeners today?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that one of the things that I have learned most over my photography journey, which has led to where I am today, is to not be afraid to let your life and the evolution of your life to not be afraid to let that um, change the journey that your business is on. And I say that because I started out as a wedding photographer and evolved into a family photographer and a newborn photographer. And then as my children got older, I had to do only newborn because I couldn't rely. I had all of these children to take care of, and I couldn't work within the realms of the Pacific Northwest weather conditions all the time. So I started shooting newborn. And then when the pandemic hit, I turned my lens again and started to focus more on my homestead and flowers. And then that has taken me in this whole different direction where I'm able to share my photography and writing and do that in the form of these books. And I spent the last couple years writing and photographing for these books. And so this year I'm doing workshops all over and really enjoying being, that face-to-face communication and connection with my community. And so it's all kind of just that evolution that happened in life, around the same time that pandemic hit was also about the same time my kids started getting old enough and they didn't want to be in front of the camera anymore. They were too busy at their lacrosse practices and they're, doing all of their sports and activities. And so I, naturally turned my lens toward, what would sit still for me, which were my flowers. So I just wouldn't be afraid to follow that natural evolution that's happening within your life and let that see where the business leads you as well.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing. Just as our gardens are constantly changing, our lives are constantly evolving as well. Thank you for sharing that. Well, it has been such an honor to chat with you. I would love to leave the door open to have you back on the podcast again. It would be so much fun to chat again.
I would love that. I look forward to it.
Me too. Well, thank you so much. And until next time, happy gardening.
Thank you, Jen.
Thank you, flower friends, for joining us on another episode of The Backyard Bouquet. I hope you've enjoyed the inspiring stories and valuable gardening insights we've shared today. Whether you're cultivating your own backyard blooms or supporting your local flower farmer, you're contributing to the local flower movement. And we're so happy to have you growing with us. If you'd like to stay connected and continue this blossoming journey with local flowers, don't forget to subscribe to the Backyard Bouquet podcast. I'd be so grateful if you would take a moment to leave us a review of this episode. And finally, please share this episode with your garden friends. Until next time, keep growing, keep blooming, and remember that every bouquet starts right here in the backyard.